Hello, Malcolm here, and thanks for joining me today on the Sunday Sample for Corporate Worship Matters. And it's episode 108, and we have a long title today. Let me give the whole title to you. How to inspire everyone to participate in worshipful singing from the start of the service. How to inspire everyone to participate in worshipful singing from the start of the service, from the beginning. So do you ever, as a worship leader, encounter the following situation? The worship team are ready, the lead worshiper is asking the congregation to sit down or move towards their seats, and you want to begin the actual singing. And then you start the first song, and you can see, if you're in the worship team, people out there chattering away, having a good conversation with their friend they've met at church again after having not seen them for a week, and they're talking through the first chorus, the first verse, possibly even the second and third verses, and sometimes you don't get everybody really engaged until the third verse, the fourth verse, or sometimes not even until the second song. Even though you've prepared, even though you've prayed about it, even though actually it's going well, that it's being sung well and the instrumentalists are doing well, whatever. So what do you do when you have that situation? And I'm sure you've had that if you have, like me, many times. What's your reaction? Do you feel frustrated? Do you feel confused as to why it's happening and why it's not working the way you think it should? Do you even sometimes feel anger towards people that, come on, this is so important, we need to participate? Or perhaps it really doesn't matter, it doesn't bother you, and maybe it doesn't matter that much. In every congregation I've ever been part of, this has been an expressed consistent challenge for the worship leading team. Everywhere I've been, since the very early days of my participation in corporate worship like this, different solutions have been tried in different places. I've tried different things. I've seen other people try different things to get people more engaged earlier on in that musical part of the service. It's become obvious that some possible solutions seem to work better than others. And it's also become obvious to me that no one solution fits all circumstances. Different congregations have different needs at different times. So what do we do when we have this situation? Perhaps what do you do already? Now, last night, this is on my mind because last night I was with the men of the Watford Church of Christ, and we were discussing plans for 2020 next year, which is a frightening thing to think about, 2020. And we were talking about many things, and then towards the end of the congregation, one of the men brought up this issue of how we start our service. Well, actually all to do with our worship, our musical worship, and various ideas which were great to surface and discuss. And I was really grateful that the topic came up. And as part of the topic about our musical worship, the issue of how we start came up. And it was an interesting discussion around the table with the men from the Watford Church, and very helpful. And that's why it came up. And so we had, we're contemplating the best way to proceed in Watford. We're going to continue talking about it and work out what we're doing. And today I'm not so much going to offer solutions, because I think solutions vary so much depending on your local situation. So I'm not so much going to bring solutions to the table today. What I'd like to do rather is lay out some thoughts and principles for us, and then to ask you what you think will work or does work where you are, if you found a good solution. So I'm writing this out in the blog, and I'm speaking this out in the podcast and onto the YouTube video as a way of figuring out my own thinking and thinking about what matters most for us in Watford as well as in Thames Valley. So here, we've got three thoughts here. Three thoughts about this kind of situation. Number one, the situation is a positive challenge. It's a positive challenge. It's not a negative thing. It's not so much a problem. It's a positive challenge. And I don't mean that as mere words to reframe the issue, but more that it's important that we understand that people talking during the singing is evidence of another strength, of another positive. The fact that people like to talk is not actually a problem. In fact, the fact that people like to talk in our churches when they see each other is a positive thing. That's not a problem. That's not a negative. That's a positive thing that people like to chat. One of the great strengths of our fellowships is that people love each other deeply. And if you love each other deeply, you can't expect to come to church and just sit there quietly for 5 minutes before the service begins. That's not right. Because people love each other, they love to talk, they love to connect, is perhaps the better way to put it. So they're genuinely glad. We're genuinely glad to see each other. We want to connect. We want to catch up and encourage each other. Those are all good things. So that means that whatever we do to help the entire congregation to engage with the musical worship as early in the service as we can, that must not negate this strength of fellowship. We mustn't let finding strength in one area mean we provoke or produce weakness in another. Now that's true for the worship. The fact that our fellowship is so strong shouldn't detract from our musical worship corporately, but then also if we emphasize the corporate worship at the beginning, it shouldn't detract somehow from the zeal and the faith and the power of the fellowship. So it's important to think about that. So whatever solution you come up with in your local situation, whatever solution we come up with, let's make sure we don't compromise the zeal, the joy, and the depth of fellowship. So that's principle number one, or point number one, is it's a positive challenge. The second thing I would say is that different solutions are needed in different situations. Now the context will dictate which actions might be most appropriate in your own situation, which could be very different from my own. The size of the congregation makes a difference. The acoustics of the room make a difference as to how you gather people and get the focus. The availability of a PA or not can make a difference to how you would do this. Other factors will make some solutions viable and others not. And just because something works in one congregation doesn't mean it will work in another. So just because somebody else says in my church we do this, doesn't mean it will necessarily work in yours. Perhaps you should try it, or perhaps you've seen it done well when you were in a different congregation back in the day and you think we should just do that worked. Well, maybe, but maybe not. So keep an open mind about what will work for you, because different solutions work in different situations. Consider carefully through trial and error what will be most effective in your situation. That's principle number two. Principle number three, gentle but clear expectations. Gentle but clear expectations. It'll be difficult to engage everybody from the start unless the congregation understands that this is an expectation. Unless we lay it out there as this is the way we think it should be, that by the time we started that first song, maybe the first few words, the first line or two, by the time we get there, we really want to be together. We think that's the right thing to do. If there's no clarity of expectation, we're not going to get very far towards that goal. So some teaching on why that matters would be very helpful. I'm not going to go into that now, but I'd be interested in your thoughts about the right way to put this across. So we're not trying to create some rule. We're not trying to force people to do something they don't want to do, but we think this matters. How would you do that? We do need to avoid creating rules. People aren't coming into a military academy, a meeting of the local cadet corps or something when they come into a church service. It's not like that. People aren't school children being corralled into a situation of conformity. And not to say that all teachers do that. I do love you teachers, don't get the wrong impression. But let's be clear about the reasoning and the value of worshipping together corporately. Do it though with gentleness. Do it with gentleness, not harshness. It seems to me that you may have heard this done, and I have done it from time to time, but it seems to me that shushing a congregation is not the right way to go. I really don't like it when people shush me. It feels like I am a naughty school child or naughty child of some kind being shushed because I'm being naughty. I don't find that particularly helpful myself. It puts me in a bit of a negative posture. But then I'm supposed to worship God and I'm thinking about, oh, I'm feeling naughty. Maybe that's just me, but I don't like shushing. I think on occasion it needs to be done. Sometimes we have to ask for quiet, and perhaps a shush will get us some way towards that. But I think if we can avoid the shushing, all the better. I don't think that's a good place to start from to worship God. But maybe there's a better way to inspire full participation in corporate biblical musical worship. Perhaps it's a Bible reading before we begin. Perhaps it's a prayer before we begin. Perhaps it's a few words of inspiration or a performance by the worship team. I heard that Stefan was telling me that in Amsterdam, I don't know if they still do this, but they used to have the worship team used to perform a song at the beginning, and then by the time they'd finished that, people were gathered and then they started the corporate worship together. Nice idea. Perhaps we could put up a video of a video there at the beginning or something like that, to sort of get people's attention and then begin singing together. I'm sure there are lots of different ways to do this. There must be many ways to inspire full congregational participation from the start, or at least pretty much from the start. So here's what I would love to know. What have you tried that's worked for you? What have you seen done that's worked? And again, what have you tried that hasn't worked? And why didn't it work for you? Because it might work for somebody else. So what's worked and why, and what you tried that hasn't worked, and what conclusions do you draw from that? And perhaps also, what have you seen elsewhere? Other congregations, other situations you've been in, what's worked and why, and what hasn't worked and why. It'd be really helpful to know that. And if you're doing something at the moment that's working, I'd love to know about that, because something that's actually working that you're part of is one of the best ways that we can learn. And then we might be able to adapt it for our own situation. So please let me know what you got there. So my question for the day is, what is your suggestion for creating the best possible opportunity for full congregational participation in the musical worship from as early as possible in the service? Now there's another long sentence. I love long sentences, but okay, bear with me as I repeat that one. What is your suggestion for creating the best possible opportunity for full congregational participation in the musical worship from as early as possible in the service? Let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are. Drop a note in the comment box. If you're watching the video, put it below. If you're listening to the podcast, there'll be an opportunity somewhere there to drop a comment, or you can email your thoughts to me at it's malcolm@malcolmcox.org, MALCOLM, don't forget that silent L, malcolm@malcolmcox.org. Or you can go to my website, leave a comment there. You can leave a voicemail on the website. There's a special little button you can press to leave me a 30-second voicemail, which is quite cool, I think. And just leave a comment. Leave it publicly so that we can learn from each other, because we learn best when we're learning in community, isn't that right? If you know anybody who might benefit from this, then please pass the link on. If you're watching the YouTube video, hit the notification button, subscribe button if you hadn't already done so. We're almost at 300 subscribers, which may not be a lot in the grand scheme of things, but to me, it seems like a lot. So let's get to 300. That'd be pretty cool. And if you could leave me a review in the podcasts, that would be fantastic. The reason for doing that is it just raises the visibility of the podcasts and the search engines and so on. They pick them up more so when people are searching. And we just want to spread the word and get as much feedback as we can. So thanks very much. And I do hope that the next time you gather with all of your friends to worship our great and mighty God, that you'll do so with reverence and awe, and maybe even from the very start. Take care and God bless.